Welcome back to the Oscar Project Podcast, the show where I discuss Oscar-nominated films year by year. I am your host, Jonathan Berger, and today I'm joined by Chris Etrata, one of the winners of this year's Oscar Prediction Contest. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, and congratulations for being one of the winners this year. We'll start off talking a little bit about the Oscars, even though we're almost a month now removed as we're recording this. What were your thoughts on the Oscars this year? Anything jump out at you?
So I loved Conan being the new host of the Oscars, and I just thought he did a fabulous job of the jokes being funny. Like, my favorite standout was the one where that streaming bit where he promoted the theaters as the best form of streaming.
Yeah, the cinema stream, I think they called it.
Yes. And I also loved how he seemed respectful of the films. Like, you know how it seems like with the past Oscar hosts, they seem a little bit in contempt of some of these films, especially with how long some of the films are. They complain, like, wow, these films are so long. But now Conan, he's like, wow, I just wish it could have been longer.
Yeah, I thought he was a pretty good host. And I think I saw that he's already been lined up for next year, too.
Yep. The best choice.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he has a couple-year run hosting, kind of like Jimmy Kimmel did a couple years back.
Yeah, I could even see him as being up there with, like, Billy Crystal if he keeps up with it for so long.
Yeah. What were some of your favorite Oscar-nominated films this year? Which ones did you really like?
For the Best Picture nominees, one of my favorite, well, actually, my personal pick would be Wicked. I haven't seen the original Broadway show, but I do love the film for the performances, the amazing musical numbers, especially Defying Gravity.
Yeah.
Which, on a related note, I loved how they played it during the intro.
Yeah, it was an interesting introduction there. I remember saying to someone, I wish it had been a little more than just Wicked, like more movies in general, but it was certainly a showy way to get the show kicked off. And obviously it's probably the Oscar-nominated film from this year that most people had seen, so an easy one to bring people in.
But even though Wicked is my personal pick, I also really loved Anora.
Yeah, as did I.
Yeah, I loved how it became like, it started off as more of a romance comedy and then turned to a screwball with those gangsters being so incompetent. And
yeah, that whole middle section where they're wandering around town trying to find the guy was pretty crazy.
But even like when they were kidnapping her, it was funny because of all the reactions of how the gangsters were a bit incompetent at their jobs, and Mikey was just a total badass.
Yeah, she definitely earned that Oscar. I wasn't sure who it was going to be between her and Demi Moore, but she definitely earned it from her performance.
Yeah, speaking of predictions, I actually called out that Anora was gonna have like a 5 Oscar sweep. I know most others were a little bit worried as whoever can win anything more than just Best Picture. Some thought it would get Best Director, and that was pretty much it. Others, there were some that were unsure about who would win Best Actress, like he said, and there was definitely a lot more people that didn't think it would get Best Editing.
Yeah, I was pretty sure it was going to get Director. I had a feeling it was going to be between that and Conclave for Best Picture. And it was interesting I had everybody kind of place their own ballots when I had folks fill out the contest form. And actually, it was down to Anora and Conclave. But in our voting for my contest, Conclave was the ultimate winner. So I'm would love to see the actual votes and see kind of how close it was between those two films in reality.
Yeah, Conclave would have been the most likely if it wasn't for Anora. I just figured that since Anora was like the front runner for Best Original Screenplay, and now it seemed to get Best Director, it's a very hard combination to beat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I liked most of the films for Best Picture. The only one that I wasn't really too crazy about was A Complete Unknown. It just didn't really say a whole lot about who Bob Dylan was, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think my least favorite of those, and it's picking I say the worst. It's not really the worst. It's just the one I like the least was honestly The Brutalist. I didn't really connect with it, but so I know some people who really, really loved it and others who wasn't crazy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I do love it myself, but I can see why it would turn away some people.
Yeah. Well, we've touched on the Oscars a little bit. What about other stuff that you've seen so far this year that has caught your fancy? I know it's been a little bit of a slow start to the year in terms of new box office releases, but anything you've seen that's really jumped out at you?
Well, I love the Mickey 17.
I haven't gotten a chance to see that. I'm working my way through the book at the moment, but I'm definitely gonna check that out as soon as I'm done with the book.
Yeah, I loved Mickey 17. I love the themes. I loved Robert Pattinson's performance, and I was already a huge fan of Bong Joon Ho. I apologize if I didn't say his name correctly, but I loved Parasite, and I was so excited to see this as a result. But yeah, other than that, like you said, it's kind of been a slow start. I'm not really big into superhero films as anywhere near as much as I used to.
Yeah, have you seen the new Captain America yet?
Now, I think the last superhero movie I saw was back in 2019.
Okay.
That was with the first Joker film, and then COVID kinda hit, and that's when it started to feel a little, ironically, a little too real, if
Yeah, hitting a little close to home with some of those.
although, that doesn't mean I've turned away from, like, all the other blockbusters. I still, like, look forward to, like, the next Mission Impossible film, the next Jurassic Park film. I know the last few were kind of underwhelming, but maybe with the new director, this one will help turn the tide.
Yeah. Well, and you say underwhelming, but I think they still I know the Jurassic World, first of this last 3 was, I think, for a time, challenging for top all time at the box office. So, I mean, people still love the Jurassic films, and you're right about Mission Impossible. I can't go wrong with Tom Cruise hanging onto airplanes and
Yeah, I do think that if the last Mission Impossible was released further away from the whole Barbieheimer thing, this would have done a lot better.
yeah.
It would have taken advantage of the Top Gun Maverick buzz instead of being overshadowed by both Barbie and Oppenheimer.
We're recording this beforehand, but when this releases, we will have just had the Minecraft movie come out a couple days ago. I've got kids, so of course going to be going to see that. And then you mentioned that you enjoyed Wicked. We've obviously got Wicked Part 2 or Wicked for Good, as they're calling it, coming out later this year. Avatar 3 at the end of the year. So there's definitely some things to look forward to. I think the second half of this year is probably going to be the stronger half in terms of big movies coming out.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Avatar 3 in particular, and then Wicked as well. For me, like, other than the blockbusters, the most exciting time for me is when the Oscars award season do kick in, because I know award shows can be questionable as to what they award or what their actual views are, but the films that come out of it are often at least great.
Yeah, and I thought by and large the films that were nominated this year, we're kind of going back to the Oscars. I thought they were by and large really really excellent films. Even the ones that I didn't like as much, I still was able to find some really good things in pretty much every one to enjoy. I know I've in the past there's been at least 2 or 3 each year where I was just like, this isn't for me. I don't I don't know why this was nominated, but I didn't really feel that at all this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. What are your thoughts on Amelia Perez?
I enjoyed it when I first watched it. I think I was higher on it than a lot of people were initially, and my feelings have kind of subsided a little bit. And part of that obviously is due to the controversy with the lead actress, but part of it is just for me it was so. I went into it not knowing what to expect, and it kind of blew me out of the water because it was so unexpected. And I've tempered my opinions on it a little bit, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, for me, I thought it was decent. I certainly thought a bit more than some of the others. I wouldn't say it's like best picture worthy in my opinion, but
No,
at least one thing that I can admire is that it took some big swings.
absolutely.
It doesn't play it safe. I mean, not all of the times it works, and yeah, the actual plot can be maybe a little too simple, but the directing style is, regardless of like if the how the director may have not really researched into Mexican culture that much. It now obviously once the whole racist tweets came out, it I was like hoping for I'm Still Here to win best foreign film, and thankfully it did.
Yeah, I think I wrote at the time somewhere so in the intervening times I've mentioned somewhere I wish I'd love to see more musicals in like a thriller genre or crossing musicals with genres where you don't normally see. Obviously, you normally see them as, musical drama or musical comedy maybe, but you don't see them as thrillers. So I thought, like you said, it took chances. It definitely pushed some boundaries. Did it always work? Not necessarily, but at least give it some credit for what it was able to accomplish.
Well, Bollywood, the film industry in, India, they do a lot of what you say they do, where the films are pretty much almost every film has musical numbers, whether it's action or horror film.
It's funny you mentioned it. I was just thinking the other day about RRR that came out several years ago, and I think I mean, it's really hard to pin down a genre for that film. It's musical, it's romance, it's not really comedy, but there's definitely action in there.
I believe there was a term called, I think it was called masala, the masala genre, where it's a spice of everything.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to describe that. Well, anything else that you're kind of looking forward to this year that you want to bring up?
Well, I'm always looking forward to the end of the year where they bring like some of those contenders. Like one of those that I'm actually interested in seeing is that new Paul Thomas Anderson film.
Yes, Battles and Battles, I think it is
One with the battles or one from
something like that.
that's there. And then I'm also a huge animation fan. So for a lot of these like big and not just big animated studios, but the smaller animated studios, I look forward to seeing those animated films.
Yeah, and I think animation's been having a huge renaissance lately, with something like the first Into the Spider-Verse movie winning the best animated feature a couple years ago. I thought both Wild Robot and Flow were fantastic this year.
Me too.
And I love the Pixar films. I really enjoyed Inside Out. I enjoyed Inside Out 2, but I love seeing other studios, smaller studios, oftentimes competing head to head with obviously the behemoth that is Pixar and Disney.
Yeah, speaking of animation, the Oscars, I loved how like because before it was revealed that a lot of these Academy member voters they used to not really respect animation, instead just pick the Disney or the Pixar film or let
Yeah.
their children vote, which I mean, a lot of those films actually do deserve a win, but it's like they win for the wrong reasons. And that kind of just takes away like some of the other win more deserving contenders. But thankfully, it seems like over the past few years, it really does feel like they're actually watching these films now. And Flow would have never won if it came out 10 years ago, for example.
No, I don't even know if it would have been nominated in that case. The other one that I am definitely looking forward to, there's another, I think there's another new Predator movie coming out this year.
That looks promising.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the direct to Hulu Prey a couple of years ago. That was actually one of my top 10 films of that year. So I'm cautiously optimistic that they can kind of get that and get it into a theater this time, which will be great. I already mentioned Mission Impossible, Superman. Obviously, you mentioned the kind of falling off the superheroes, but I'm cautiously optimistic there as well with James Gunn at the helm for Superman and taking over the DC world. So
Yeah, I did love at least the first 2 Guardians movies that I did watch. Haven't seen the 3rd one, but I did love what he did for
yeah, I'm interested to see what he brings to Superman.
yeah, I'm just hoping that after this rough, like, first couple of quarters, we can get into some more good films again.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a dry spell, but I'm really hopeful with Minecraft coming out. Obviously, there's a huge built-in fan base there, and some other stuff coming out through April, May, and then obviously once we head into June, we get a lot of those big blockbusters that we already mentioned. And I circled back. I looked it up while we were talking. The P.T. Anderson you mentioned is currently titled One Battle After Another. We'll see if that actually sticks, but we were dancing around the actual title.
What are some of your other favorite Oscar moments this year?
From this year, I thought Kieran Culkin's speech actually was really fun, kicking off the night. The little I almost hesitate to call it a bit, but him with the saying his wife had said that they could have another kid when he won an Oscar. I thought that was funny. I also really enjoyed. I think it was Ben Stiller when he kind of came up on the elevator in the middle of the stage to do the I think it was production design category and had to climb out of the hole in the stage. Reminded me a little bit of the whole John Cena coming on pretending to be naked last year. So I thought overall it was a good strong show. There's a couple moments that didn't quite land for me. The whole James Bond segment, I just didn't
Yeah, that was
quite get.
weird. It was
And I think especially given the news that had just come out with Amazon taking that over, and it was just days before that happened. I assume they had that segment already planned out and it wasn't a reaction to that announcement, but who knows in the world of mass media today if that was the case. But yeah, those are some of the other things that I enjoyed.
same here. I mean, I thought it could be a little shorter, but
Always.
other than that, this was actually one of the best ceremonies I've watched in recent years.
Yeah, it could always be shorter. I think they tried a couple of years ago announcing a few of the awards kind of in the room, but before the actual ceremony started. I wasn't a fan of that, so I'm glad they didn't do that, but they could definitely have trimmed out 15, 20 minutes at least.
Although ironically, that show where it just had a few of them like presented non-live, that was actually one of the longer ceremonies in recent history.
Right, yeah, so it didn't really do anything to to fix that length problem.
What do you think about the lack of the performances from the songs?
That was one of the things I missed the most. I loved seeing those performed, and I never really heard any rationale for it other than that they were trying to trim time, but then they went and added 4 other segments that they didn't need, so it kind of
Yeah.
didn't really do anything in my mind.
Yeah, not that the song selection was that strong, but they really do deserve to be performed.
Yeah, and I think that's in certain years they are really good, like great song selections that deserve to be heard on stage. And those a lot of times you hear the songs at the end credits or what have you or somewhere in the film, but you don't necessarily see the artists performing them unless you get to see them in a venue like that. So I missed that for sure. Well, anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up here today?
Can I talk about how I came to these Oscar predictions real quick?
Sure, go for it.
So yeah, out of all the predictions, I missed the shorts categories, which if you take a look at my predictions and what the consensus picks, we were all far off.
Yeah, those are always the hardest to predict anyway.
Because like you can go by the consensus pick or you can go by your favorite or your gut feeling, and it can always be some other film that no one else has. Other than that, there were only two films categories that I missed. One was best documentary. I kind of thought that maybe the Palestine might be too bit of a touchy subject, so I thought maybe with Porcelain War it could be a way to for them to at least say that they care about a certain crisis going on without it being too touchy. And in a way, they're still kind of it still kind of is because like even though they gave the award to No Other Land, they did not really put out a strong statement after one of the directors was attacked.
Yeah, that was just recently, and obviously, I just saw the other day a bunch of Academy members have kind of denounced that. So there's definitely support from the individual members of the Academy for that film and for that story and what's going on over there, even if the Academy itself doesn't necessarily make the statements that everybody wishes they would.
Yeah. And then the fifth category that I missed was Best Animated Film. I thought The Wild Robot was going to get it because it seemed to be sweeping up the award animation awards, and Flow did lose BAFTA to Wallace and Gromit, so I kind of thought that as a result, then maybe The Wild Robot would have it, but still, Flow winning is pretty encouraging.
Yeah, I missed that as well. I definitely had either one of those 2 as the top choice, and I just voting with my heart, I preferred Wild Robot ever so slightly above Flow,
Yeah, Wild Robot would have been my pick too.
and I think it had won a lot of the awards from smaller guilds earlier on, at least the one, anything that has something related to animation. So we'll see. I'm sure both of those folks will be back in the nominees in the future. So we'll see what they've got coming up next for us.
Yeah, and then as for the film predictions I got right, I already talked about how I predicted an Anora sweep. Other than that, a lot of these categories were the same ones that most others got right. Oh, and I've also watched this at a bar with some of the other film fans, so
Oh, fantastic!
everyone was cheering. They were especially cheering every time Anora won or when I'm Still Here won for Best Foreign Film. Just had a terrific time in general.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad we were able to get you on, and thanks again for entering the contest. Hopefully, you'll be able to come back next year and repeat your win. Is there anything you want to anything you do online, or anything you want to plug, or just enjoy watching movies?
I just enjoy watching movies in general. I guess the one thing I can say is I hope theaters don't die out in the future, because there's been huge concern that theaters could go the way of the radio dramas.
Definitely support your local cinemas, support smaller cinemas. Just make sure you're going to the movies. That's the message.
Definitely.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I want to make sure everybody follows the Oscar Project at theoscarproject.substack.com. And be sure to come back for more interviews with filmmakers and film discussions throughout the year. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you at the movies.